I do this when I'm teaching too. Like we could start early 1 minute, but I know there's always like one person that shows up like right. All right, it's 4 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is, hopefully everyone can hear me, Susie Estrada. I'll talk in this corner. I'm the Family and Community Engagement Specialist with the USBE. I am so glad that I get to present right after Clarence because I've heard Clarence present before. For those that weren't here for that, Clarence is with the STEM Action Center. And I actually reference them now a lot in my presentations, especially when I'm talking about the microwave story. It'll come up, but it's just something that has really stuck with me as far as that early engagement and then family participation. So today we'll be looking at family engagement for early intervention, and we're going to place a strong emphasis on protective factors. I know there's people online, but since we're a small crowd, just feel free this can be a conversation essentially. So today's learning objectives, defining the core pillars of family engagement, identifying strategies to engage families who have infants and toddlers for lifelong readiness, and then defining the impact of family engagement across a person's lifespan. And then probably most significant for this presentation is defining protective factors as a universal strength. So what is family engagement? It looks a little differently as far as responses when you're looking at different programs. Some people, it might be the newsletter, it might be an in-person event. This is the definition that we're using across the state when we're talking about family engagement. So we're looking at it as a full, equal, and equitable partnership among families, educators, and community partners to promote children's learning and development from birth through college and career. So the emphasis here being full, equal, and equitable. So not just focusing on the child as a student or the child as a behavior, but looking at them as a whole person. Equal and then equitable, really what is fair? Are we providing supports that that family needs? And focusing on making information accessible, programs, and everything else that comes with supports. Why invest in family engagement? So parents, teachers, and schools, research shows that when the work is done together, there are positive outcomes. So we're looking at higher rates of attendance for students in school. We're looking at lower behavioral incidents for students when there's higher rates of family engagement. And we're looking also at higher rates of teacher retention and positive student outcomes. So not only are there benefits for that student, there's benefits for the families, and then there's benefits for you all as teachers. You're enjoying your jobs more. There's less rate of turnover, which is helping the school community. And then so the research that I'm thinking of looks specifically at home visits. So if 10% of the students receive home visits, there's positive outcomes that come with that. But even for students that didn't receive those home visits, it bleeds out into the school. So everyone else, it goes back to like that quote of when the tide rises, like all boats rise with the tide, something like that. I completely butchered that. So quotes are not my strength, clearly. And then these are the elements of family engagement. So they're sequential. First, building positive relationships with families, understanding that that can take time. There's families that have had negative experiences with school systems or just have other barriers as far as like they're anxious, meeting new people, advocating is not something that they are comfortable with or familiar with. So building that relationship so that they can understand we're on your side, we're here with you, and we want that feedback back from you. Promoting pathways for partnerships with families. So letting them know you don't have to participate like on day one, the door is open, whenever you're ready, we're here. Making the effort on our part to let them know. So showing up consistently every single time, being positive, keeping that door open. And then promoting family well-being. So this goes to the protective factors, workshops for families to build their skills, for them to be able to access services. So for example, I heard you all mention like a family event that you'll be hosting. If you were to give out the STEM Action Center's board games, and increasing that awareness, like Clarence mentioned, about the importance of talking to your children about math in a positive way, using math language concepts. That's promoting family well-being. You're increasing awareness. You're letting them know the significance of what their words and their actions has. And that is increasing their actions with their children. Another scenario would be asking families, what is your goal? What is it that you would like to see in regards to like yourself? Um, and I knew that that was going to happen. I'm always like squirrel. Now I'm lost. Uh, I'm really almost. So really the key thing here is not just planning workshops with what we have in mind, but like asking families, what is your goal? We might think financial literacy is really important. We need to teach the families, but then they're interested in like something unrelated. They're interested in talking about internet safety because they don't understand like the new apps and things like that. And then supporting child and youth development and learning. So helping increase awareness with families on what is typical development, what might be cultural as well, as far as language development. So I'll use my family specifically. I have a family member, my nephew, who doesn't speak yet. They're 3, they'll be 4 soon. And understanding that that might be a typical behavior for them. It might not mean a disability. It could just also be because of the life history that they have, the way that they've been socialized, because they're speaking more now that there has been some changes, right? So supporting families in that way as well. The reason why we're focusing on protective factors today is for a few reasons. We've had a lot of conversations around ACEs, so adverse childhood experiences, and the negative life outcomes that can come with the higher that number is. As an 8 on that scale, it can sometimes create some anxiety for people. The deficit perspective also, as far as, oh, because I've had these traumatic life events, does that mean that now I'm going to, fill in the blank? And so shifting that perspective and going back to protective factors, as far as just because abuse or neglect has already occurred, it doesn't mean that protective factors can't counteract those negative effects. So looking at some of those protective factors, it can be parental resilience, social connection. The 5 key factors that are protective factors: concrete supports in times of needs. So you all will receive information from families regarding what's going on in their personal lives. From students, you might hear, so as a preschool, kindergarten teacher, I also ran an after school program. Sometimes you get more information that you necessarily need from children. My dad slept on the couch last night. Okay, great. Right now we're counting. Maybe we can count the number of nights. I don't know. But concrete supports in times of need. If a family comes to you, Head Start would be a great example of this, when they have like a family liaison that works with the family. If they need support in paying their gas bill, connecting them with that service, support with food, connecting them to a food pantry and different things like that. Knowledge of development also being really critical, especially for families in stressful times. So becoming frustrated with their child because their child is behaving like a 3-year-old. And so letting them know, 1, this is typical. These are some strategies that you can use to support your child when they're struggling with turn taking or not wanting to, take a bath or go to bed. Have you tried these different things? So providing that knowledge of development, and then key strategies that they can use at home. Social connections, providing access to networks for families, or encouraging them to reach out, having them even think and identify one person that they can message or contact when they are feeling stressed, or if they were in an emergency situation, their car breaks down, who is someone that you can reach out to and talk to and ask for help. Would be something that we could do to help increase that protective factor. Resilience, people have spoken about, there's a lot of curriculum now that talks about grit and developing grit for students. But then the question that I would pose to all of you and everyone on Zoom is, do we develop grit? Do some people just have grit? Does a child that shows up to school, sleeps in class, doesn't turn in their homework, but shows up to school after a night of hearing chaos in their home, is that grit, or do we need to develop grit? That's open for Zoom and for you all too. And I'll summarize. So grit being both the kid that does show up, but then also having to teach persistence. I can do hard things when kids are saying, "Oh, I can't do it." Um, Number 5 would be the cognitive, social, and emotional competence. So again, going back to this piece of promoting family well-being, it's increasing that awareness, building families' skill set when it comes to cognitive, social, and emotional well-being, having families self-reflect, develop their skills as they're managing their own emotions, and then recognizing that every family has strengths. So regardless of where they are now, and what behaviors they might be engaging in, realizing that they still have strengths. So whether it's a family coping with survival, recognizing that and highlighting that for them, looking at their history. So are they a family that has a history with immigration, or just generational trauma? Looking at charisma. So for example, my mom, and I do use myself as an example a lot because I think it makes it more understandable or concrete for some folks. But my mom not speaking English, and not having a lot of navigational knowledge, but using charisma to be able to tap into those networks and get the information that she needed to find transportation. Transportation was a barrier for my school attendance. And my mom was able to use her charisma to tap into other parents that could pick me up and bring me to school. Special trades, so looking at families that have different types of careers. So if you're having a guest speaker, looking at families that can promote different career opportunities, even at the preschool level. Generational strength and pride, and then consejos. It's in Spanish for just advice. So what advice can families provide to us and then to others within your school community? So ACEs being the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing our nation today. So we are focusing on protective factors, but we do need to recognize that these experiences do have long-lasting effects if they're not counteracted or when we're not consciously aware. And the need to build stronger and healthier communities and practicing families as a value requires that we ensure families are informed and engaged. So I don't know if you all can list examples of how you engage your families, what information you might share, and then what methods you might use. Parent coaching being a twice a month connection to talk about anything that's going on in their life and trying to connect with resources or just advice on what they can do. Do we have anything on Zoom? Okay. It's late in the day. I'm surprised that we even have 3 people here, especially with the way that weather was. My presentations usually do really good with large crowds.
Yeah,
'Cause-
great. Great. Good for you.
Building stronger communities. So looking at the family, making sure that we're valuing the family. Lots of conversations about what is, the best way to teach and what should we teach. But really focusing, families have a right to have their voice in the classroom, and then centering that voice. So uh, looking at, and this is something that I was thinking about yesterday. So it's a very new metaphor. I'm testing it out here. But looking at, if in the profession, the medical profession, right? So if we're doctors or nurses, um, as professionals, we might have an idea of like what is best or what's right for a patient. But ultimately that patient still has the right to choose what treatment they do get or they don't get. And regardless of what our feelings are, what we would want for ourselves or for our family members, it's not our place to say, you're wrong, you need to do this. It's just about respecting and acknowledging that and then incorporating that. Looking at early learning and family engagement and protective factors, taking in the stories that your families are sharing and finding ways that you can respectfully incorporate that into your daily lessons. So whether it's culture, like food, music, or tradition, or it's just a lived experiences. So again, bringing in those guest speakers to talk or to show something to your students, and highlighting for families, again, for if we are looking at ACEs, a lot of times those families won't recognize that they have a lot of strengths. So having to reframe it where, look at what you've overcome, look at what you've done, look at what you've accomplished. And so there's another quote that I saw on Instagram. So that's my citation. Um, just because your family didn't break all of the generational curses doesn't mean that they didn't like overcome some of them. So having to really point that out for folks being really impactful. Um, this is Jared. So I think you've all met Jared and Listenby. And I stole this video from one of their presentations. But recognizing the parents are children's first and most important teachers and advocates. So children, I'm sure you all know, are looking at their parents, looking at the adults and modeling those behaviors. They're picking it all up. And families might even know, like, oh, my kid's a sponge, but then not be 100% aware of their actions that they're modeling for them. My niece, apparently, I walk a certain type of way. And when she was very little, that was what she decided to do, carrying a purse. And people pointed out, like, oh, like, look, she's acting like you. And I didn't even realize that that was something I did. So we'll watch this video. And then I want you to just pay attention to the interaction and then share what you observe. We can get the sound. So do you know how to get the sound in here? It's not. I could try to imitate the baby sounds, but I don't know if anyone wants to hear that. They won't let me out of the presentation too. I don't know. Are the slides posted for folks to see later? I don't know. Well, I will narrate the video. And the male, I'm presuming, is the dad and is saying, I love you to the baby. It just keeps repeating it. They're laughing, they're having a good time. This is another video. Very cute babies. And then the baby is making like gurgly baby sounds back, but they imitate the sound of I love you. So they're not saying I love you, but the sounds that are coming out are making the same like noise patterns. So pretending that you got the full experience, you would have observed just some imitation, turn taking, and then just positive engagement. So that attachment, and then those social skills building. What impact do you think talking with your young child has on their long-term development?
number one thing that we try to get our parents to. And kind of like what you said.
Thank you. Quick summary, because I don't know if I can say all that back. So
It is important. Yes.
So working with students in the school of I am butchering that, deaf and blind students. There's another letter. Is
The
it
Utah School.
Utah School for the Deaf and Blind? USDB. The main, like the key thing that they share they would want is for families to talk to their students, with their children, and then the long-term positive impact that has socially, but then also developmentally. So the 3 sentence thing that I could summarize. But yeah, and that goes across all families, I think. So talking to families at dinner, or talking with children at dinner, narrating with them, even just pointing things out at the grocery store, as far as, oh, what color is that orange? Well, what color is that orange? What color is that banana? What color is that banana? How many oranges do we have? And then just modeling some self-talk too. So that narration of, I'm feeling really frustrated. This car in front of me is going so slow. We're going to be late to our appointment. That self-talk, kids are actively listening to. They're picking up on coping skills for English learners as well in the classroom. Self-talk is one strategy that you can use to help build their English skills. They're picking up on that. They're learning from that. What other ways my interactions with young children impact their long-term development? Zoom is also very quiet.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
the thought too is just those relationships. Language, learning so
Relationships, learning about your culture, social cues, all coming through those early interactions. Again, a lot of the being an 8 on the ACEs score, I don't remember a lot often from like my early childhood or even middle childhood. But I do remember stories and advice. Those are some things that I am able to remember. And so the impact of what those stories mean and how they impacted like my worldview and the way that I came to understand myself as well. The way that we talk to our children about values often not being a sit down conversation about, these are our values, I want you to internalize, showing up in other ways, the way we talk about others, ourselves. And then also being aware that, especially if you have an anxious child, communicating with them changes that are coming up, whether it's a change in schedule or a change in, just the routine that they're accustomed to, the impact that that can have. And then communicating with them if there is like tension, communicating with them, mom is tired today, or mom is not feeling well today. And then again, that models some of that self-regulation, coping, emotional awareness for our kids. Setting the foundation for success. So engagement must remain consistent all the way through. There's an assumption of independence and assumptions of a learning to engage as children get older, but that it's quite the opposite. So there is some more independence. They're learning to self-advocate for themselves, but there's still that need to be able to check back in. So that attachment, the assurance that someone will be there to catch them if something happens. And then adolescents also expressing that, not expressing to parents, it's go away, but everywhere else they're saying we want that continued engagement, we want parents to show up, and how that is a protective factor for children and adolescents in school. Some strategies to engage 0 to 5-year-olds, talking with your children, talking a lot, asking and answering questions. So those feedback loops being super important, rather than just asking what color is that banana and having that be it. Okay, we've engaged. I taught them yellow. Making sure that there's something additional that can go with that. What else can you think of that's yellow? Do you like the color yellow? What is your favorite color? Oh, it's purple. What are some things that are purple? And then that helps to extend their attention span. Building relationships, modeling for kids how those relationships are built, providing access to some positive role models. So even if it's not directly in the home, are there clubs or sports in the neighborhood that they can tap into? Talking about what they're seeing in the media also being really important, even for young children when they're exposed to so many different things. And then following a child's lead being super crucial. So rather than us going in with an objective or something that we have in mind that we want out of the conversation or out of a game, following the child's lead and seeing where that goes. I think we're sharing these. If not, I'm happy to email them, but these are some links as far as to some resources that we have that can be shared with families. But there's also some activities that you can incorporate into your classrooms as well. And then the reframing of developmental milestones versus milestones. So milestones is something that I've recently become aware of. I don't know if it's been how long it's been a conversation, but thinking about how development looks different for each child. Again, culture is a factor to consider. Just because a child is avoiding eye contact, that doesn't mean that there might be a disability. It could just be culture as well. And so having increased awareness of that. Again, there's links here. I'm afraid to click on it because I've never used this and it wasn't letting me go out. We're going to try it and see what happens. So updated developmental milestones, what typically happens at this age, but again, there is some room for things to differ. So you'll have a link to that. Get back over here. And then how does family engagement relate to early intervention? So parental rights, especially in Utah, are really big. We are a very family-centered, family voice, family values. Knowing, again, promoting the awareness to them that they have their rights, that they can have conversations with their teachers about what they want their child to participate in, letting them know what the alternative options are, even at an early level, promoting that they are their child's first teacher and best advocate, and then encouraging the asking of tough questions. So even when things are uncomfortable, how do we engage in conflict? How do we engage in feelings that are hard? And then that's where, again, that protective factor of resilience comes in. Working with families, understanding that sometimes families are showing up not as the 25, 35, however old parent, but that sometimes they're showing up in crisis, and that crisis can put us back to a place, a mental place that's younger than we actually are. So working with the family to develop their skills, highlight with them expectations. I was a director for an after-school program before my position here, and I had a parent during COVID when it was the drive-through pickup drop-off style get out of their car because they were upset. They thought their child wasn't safe because their child had come out of a different door, so they thought that their child was unsupervised. And because of the door they came out of, all the doors lead directly to the parking lot. They were very upset about their child's safety. What if they ran out into the street and the car hit them? So they got out of their car and got very close into my personal space, and I thought that they were going to hit me. They didn't. It took some de-escalation, They were very angry, and rightfully so, because of their concern. De-escalated it, said I would follow up with them. We could not have the conversation in that moment. Followed up with them through email because that was their preferred way of communication. If I ever wanted to reach them, it was through email. And so sent an email outlining how we were going to validate their concerns. I hear that you're concerned about safety. These are the steps that we have in place to protect your child, to ensure that your concern of them getting hit with a car never happens. This is what you saw. This was what was happening on the other side of that door. There was an adult there. I had full vision of them. Just laying it out. I hear your concern. This is why they were not in any dangerous situation, and then following up with expectations. So modeling with them how to have that tough conversation in a way that is safe and progressive for everyone involved. So in that expectation section, outlining for them that my staff that were present were feeling anxious afterwards, that there were kids who were afraid afterwards, so that they can be aware of their impact, laying out the expectations for them. If you're staying in the program, this is what I need the next time that you're upset or concerned about something. And then laying out a consequence ultimately, because we're adults and there needs to be a consequence. You can't threaten to hit someone and have it be okay. So modeling that with them, walking them through that. And then having this also be a parent that did have a reputation for, yelling at staff and at teachers. We had a good rest of the year. They did not yell at me ever again. We had positive conversations even when they were upset. So that is one, and I share that to highlight a way that you can help a family develop those skills. Did they yell at other people in the building? Maybe. But at least with me, they were able to practice that skill of conflict resolution in a way that wouldn't lead to further issues elsewhere. Encouraging parents as well to dive into discomfort. That work is difficult. For me, I'm just a talker. And so for me, I often share a lot of stories. Being vulnerable is something that I've gotten comfortable with. I'll ruminate about it later. That's a problem for later. And so diving into that discomfort with families, having participated in home visits, going into a family's vulnerable space is something that my personal ethics allowed me to do that. I felt comfortable doing that so that families knew I'm a person too. And I'm not here to catch you or to judge you. And then creating parent networks. So again, having what we call cultural brokers. So families that are already invested in the school, they're participating in the school, and that can advocate for the program and for you as a person. Oh, I know Susie. Susie works well with us. You can trust her. That coming from a parent means a lot more than Susie trying to say, I swear you can trust me. And then options to address concerns. Again, those cultural influences, so cultural brokers. Understanding that some delays in development can be nurture related or cultural. Some of it can be subjective. Early identification can have long lasting effects. So just because we're trying to be aware that culture can impact development or how we're perceiving development, being aware as well as far as early intervention. So letting families know, when we're checking in, hey, we've observed this, have you, and trying to assess, is this an early intervention need? And then going to the experts to find support for that as well, if there is something that needs to be supported. Post-diagnosis, these are some resources as well that we have in Utah. The Children's Center, I will say, is the one that I've tapped into the most with the families that I've had. Sometimes children that, just because we're understaffed, we can't provide the quality service that child deserves, for safety, for just quality overall. Using the Children's Center as a resource, and then seeing the benefits that came out of that child growing, developing the social emotional skills so that they can go into kindergarten and be successful there. And then the overall support that meant for the family as well, because now, mom's not getting a call at 10 o'clock in the morning saying we can't, we need help because behavior. Once you get to slides 2, we also have the portrait of meaningful inclusion. So I lived in California until I moved to Utah in 2014. The preschool that I first worked at was a fully inclusive preschool. We worked with the Chime Institute. So through that program, the Chime Institute would provide a one-on-one support for a child with a disability in the classroom, but that didn't mean that that child was siloed or that that person only worked with that child and that no one else worked with the child. So full inclusion meant they were participating in each activity. That person was there to support when needed, as needed, but everyone was interacting with everyone essentially at the same time. I wasn't their one-on-one support specialist, but I was still sitting there reading stories with them. They would sit on my lap, read stories with them. It was fully inclusive. And then leveraging community partnerships and resources. Often it feels like we have a lot on our plate and how are we going to do this? We don't necessarily need to recreate the wheel. There's a lot of resources already out there. So 5045, STEM Action Center, which you all saw with Clarence, the Utah Parent Center. Also, when you're looking for more information or resources for families, they're a great place for families to be able to go and find information on special education. They host a lot of virtual workshops for parents so that they can build their awareness on what their rights are, and then also strategies to support their children through a lot of different methods. There's also after school and summer programs that families can use, and then also affordable preschools, some financial supports for early learning. We've got some grants and some subsidies that can help with programs if you're looking to develop your program or to be able to increase like your numbers of training staff, just materials in the classroom. Again, stuff is really good when there's a lot of people because we have a lot of conversation and I thrive off of that, but I'm here until you guys don't want me anymore. I don't know if there's any questions or comments from anyone, but again, I'm here until 5 at least. So I'm the family and community engagement specialist. Thank you, Zoom, for being in Zoom. And awkwardly turn my computer off. Just sit here and stare at you, Teresa.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, is everyone off Zoom now? I said Zoom.
Still are.
Utah School for the Deaf and Blind.
Sorry.
I say Utah School for the Deaf and Blind. I finally got it.
And
I was like, that's a lot of words to
Yeah.
try to like put in the correct
USDB.
order right now.
USDB. I'm like, how blind am I right now?
Lola and Janet.
What do you